Police court, members of the jury. Before I conclude my remarks to you, let me just say this. What the parties say and what the defendant said, the opposing statement is not evidence. It is not to be considered evidence. What he said about Bud Christian coming to visit him in the Bear County Jail is offensive, pathological, and is arrogant. He's taking the opportunity to blame everybody for his own actions. Don Brooks for not following the street code of not reporting to the police. If he hadn't done that, none of this would have happened. Tony Howard and the things he said about Tony Howard, that's what caused him to do it. His conviction in '99 for armed robbery, that's what made him do it. What he said happened to his brother while he was in prison, that's what made him do it. Tony Howard on that day by reaching out to him as he ran by the driver's door. It's his fault. But Christian died. Tony Howard had conducted a high-risk traffic stop, none of that would have happened. Tony Howard's fault that I shot Buddy Christian. It's everybody else's fault. Pointing the fingers at anybody he chooses to. Whether it's me, whether it's the judge, whether it's anybody else. It's offensive, it's pathological, it's arrogant. But you know something? This system is a lot bigger than this one case, this defendant. Under the Constitution of the United States that we all cherish, he has a right to an attorney that is guaranteed. And he also has a right to represent himself, which is what he's elected to do. And that matters. That Constitution, no matter how offensive that it may be sometimes, it is bigger than this one case. That's the same Constitution those officers sort of uphold, protect, and defend with their life. And if you care about it, you care about it no matter how far and no matter what happens. Because it's bigger than all of that. There's a story in the Bible about fire, that you get a fire real hot and you take a piece of gold, a rough piece of gold, and you put it in the fire. You let it get hot. You let it be tested. You let it take the punishment, you pull it out, and when you pull it out, it's still gold, it's still pure. That's what we've done with this case. We put it into the fire throughout these 19 days of testimony. We've let it take the punishment time and time again of allegations and accusations and remarks, everything. What comes out is still pure. What comes out is the truth. there's something inherently good about all of this. Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, had this to say: if I could solve all the world's problems, I would not, because through adversity, a person becomes strong. And through this adversity, this adversary process of the trial, the truth becomes strong. And these folks who have had to come testify, these folks who were victimized over that 4-day period that held this city and community and surrounding areas at siege, came in, and the other witnesses, they testified with respect and dignity, being put through examination by the very man that victimized them. They're stronger by that. And the truth is stronger. And the truth is, this man did every single thing that Titus says he did. Let me talk to you about the facts. I'm not going to go into all the details of everything. It's 19 days. We've done our job. Evidence is there. It's significant. It shows during time. Let me look first at some of the things that he says. He talks about Tony Howard, and I submit to him, I'm right. He led everybody to believe from that interview there, after his first comments of talking about how Tony Howard, what Tony Howard did, and he led everybody to believe that Tony Howard was just this out-of-control officer who beat him mercifully, unmercifully, throughout his stay at the Clark County Jail in 1997. And we heard it one time in his opening statement, I believe, where he wanted to talk about how he used black gloves and took him in there and beat him, and what he did to him is not right. And he talks in that interview about how it was like he was throwing stones at a caged animal. That's what he was saying. And what he led everybody to believe. I don't understand yesterday. First time what he said was, I was in there on an armed robbery charge. And I caught Tony Howard having sex with the preacher's wife. And Tony Howard brought me out of the door. He took me into the visitation area. He pushed my head against the wall and shook me. That's not true. Even if it was not anything that he led everybody to believe whatsoever. The idea that somehow a man being held in jail on a serious violent felony of armed robbery is going to have access to be able to see somebody do something like that. In a jail that's filmed and has video going all over the place, especially in the visitation area. Those kind of things are serious. You put Tony Howard in the middle. Maybe because he knew what happened when he lived around the block. How that king would know about that, I don't know. But it's significant to know in that interview of about an hour or so that he had with Agent Rossler at Hillsman, at no time, and he talked about Tony Howard a lot, at no time did he ever say anything at all about catching him having relations with some preacher's wife. entire time. Found one disciplinary report where he was written up for false statement, an administrative investigation about where they wore a uniform while working off duty. Something in there about where he was required to go to counsel. He didn't respond appropriately to a deputy who gave him the finger and said, F you. That was it. And while he has said throughout this trial that I have read this case back and forth, I know every bit of about what it's about. I know it before they even testify. I know exactly what they have to say, and yet he got on the stand and told you, I didn't read those records. When asked, those are the only two matters that you could ever find on Tony Howard? Throughout his career in law enforcement, in response to the open records requests that were made from those departments, I can assure you if there's anything else, he would have had it. And his idea that somehow, I just didn't read that. It's not reasonable. Not problem. You've heard folks talk about how Tony Howard is a police officer. Good man. Who's in the community, talking with people, doing things. His reputation in the community for peacefulness and truthfulness. You don't put through like that. But you know, no matter what, the law provides about that. The law provides about that revenge charge. Past wrongs, no matter how serious, are in no way justification. Use of force, deadly force. This audio video. Tell me how it's called. He can say all he wants to how those who got that and hid it. But common sense would dictate that the police and everybody else wanted that tape more than anybody else that day at that time. That's why they have it. That's why they have it. He didn't turn on his blue lights. His front blue lights. It wasn't activated. And he didn't turn on otherwise. You saw in the video the blue lights weren't on. The siren wasn't on. Because he believed he was just going to talk to Matthew. He thought he saw Jamie in the car or not, or somebody that looked like Jamie. It wasn't that kind of matter. Turn on the blue light. But the police department got that out of the car. They got the hard drive and they downloaded it. Kyle Black, that was his job. He got that and downloaded it in the system, and there was nothing there. There's no video to get. And Rich Leader actually went back and checked further to see what's the last video that had been downloaded by Tony Howard. He was not a traffic officer making stops like that. It was January the 19th, 2011. There wasn't one. There wasn't. John Brooks. The first time he comes in here and talks about how John Brooks showed up at his house and there were two guys and a book bag. two guys in a book bag. And they said, come on out, and made those offensive comments that he's repeated. But he had four guys with him, and 50 pounds of dope and all these guns that scared them off. He took you down, tied him up. He's going to take him to his mama's house. That's his story. When he got to Winterville Road, he got out. He just left. And his car was not drivable because the trunk was up. It wouldn't close. So I left it there on Little Oak. That Caprice was not following. Those other guys were not in the Caprice. And I just parked the car and started walking. Because it wasn't drivable because of that trunk. I was going to go to my house and change clothes so I could work on it and get some tools. That's why I called my mom. And then switched, and that's why I called my dad. My mom was so busy, we're stopped at McDonald's, and we're so busy she couldn't take him 2 more blocks to his house on Sycamore. Probable, reasonable, corroborated by the other evidence, or in fact contradicted. Particularly common sense. Some idea. He only left that car because of the trunk. And that Caprice, it somehow wound up just a half a block away at the other end of Little Oak. At Dublin and Old Winterville Road. Parked there. These cars being found right about the same time. And the officers that found that Caprice talked to some guy, said there were 3 guys that got out of it and started walking away. The reason that the Caprice was left at his house on Rannoch Road, that's what's reasonable. But it wound up there at the same time. Reasonable? No. It's contradicted by the evidence in this case. Every bit of that. Let's look at that. What happened on March 22nd? Before that day, he wanted to get into the drug business. And he called Jadon about doing that because Jadon was in the drug business. And he wound up talking to him about what he wanted to do. And he wanted to say, I want you to see if this is good stuff or not. And he showed him a little bag of that stuff and said, it's not. I can't tell anything about that. But he keeps calling Jadon about doing that. And he talks to him on that 21st, that Monday night, about coming over. He said, I can't do that. I might can do it tomorrow. I've got to do all this. And the next morning, he calls him repeatedly, six times. And Jadon finally comes over there. And he takes him into the back room. And then he goes and gets the guys who were wearing masks. T-shirt. 2 of them had a t-shirt, white t-shirt around their face. And what was found in that Cadillac was white t-shirt. One of them had a ski mask. Sawed-off shotguns and handguns. The man picked up a green knife and opened it up. Wanted to know where Kenyatta was. Where's Kenyatta? He didn't know. What's interesting to note at that time was those other guys had masks, but Benedict. wouldn't tell him. He threatened to kill him and threatened to kill his mom. And you heard the tape of Jadon Brooks kept talking to the officer about, I need to call my mama. I need to make sure I get my mama and make sure she's protected here. About what happened. So nobody shows up because he's on the lam. I want to make sure that that happened. And he puts him in the trunk after putting duct tape around his face and around his head and putting a blue and red cloth over his head and tied his arms behind him and his legs. Jadon thought that that was going to be the end. And as the defendant describes in these tapes about Jadon crying, and that made him mad. And he's described later also. He's going to take him to Atlanta, kill him, and make him look like a drug dealer. He had to kill him. He didn't have a mask on. Do him like he did Mark Lane. Jadon got out. There were too many witnesses there at Winterville Road and Lexington Road. So he took off and went to the right. And shortly thereafter, that's where he stopped and dropped his car. And that's where the Caprice was. And don't you remember Damon Taylor who said he saw the Caprice? Don't you remember the elder who told you that basically as he was doing trash on Rannick Road there, he saw the defendant and spoke to him. And he saw a guy, he saw Jadon's car backing up. And the big guy, a guy with a big head, was backing it up there. Some idea they left it there at Rannick Road? And Damon Taylor said they saw when it was parked at Old Winterville Road in the left-hand lane to turn left to go get some lunch to take his wife, Sinead Taylor, at Gaines Elementary. He saw a hood. He kind of waved at him. The defendant waved, threw his hand up at him. And he saw Jadon's car, the Caprice convertible. That's distinctive. And some other guy's driving it, not Jadon. And he gave a description of it. Left it there at Rannick Road. He gets that car on Little Oak, and the Caprice right there, and he got the gun. And that 380 that was in my car, no idea how that got there. 380, I have no idea how that got there. Zip ties, the duct tape. And he took off at that point. Started walking and called his mom, and his mom picked him up and took him to McDonald's. He started calling his brother, called him one time, his brother brushed him off. And he called him again, and he wanted to say, come get me, come get me. And he went up, his brother Matthew went over there to McDonald's and saw him in the back seat of his mama's car. And he got out, told Kianka to get out, and he got in. She didn't have time to take him to Cascade. He didn't tell his brother, you didn't hear any evidence and idea, hey, can you take me to Cascade, take me back to my Cadillac so I can fix the trunk? Didn't tell him anything about that. That's what the evidence showed. He gets in the car with his brother, and they cut through River's Edge. He's going to change his clothes. And at that time, Officer Howard won. He saw Matthew and told him to stop 3 times. How Officer Howard's car is not absolutely certain. Adam Holloway thought it was basically on Sycamore. And he said, I'm not certain it could have been coming out of Cascade. He didn't recall. But Jerry Johnson knows how they were going through and searching that area. How Officer Howard had gone one way in the second entrance, and Jerry Johnson had gone in the other way, and how they met up in that U part of that horseshoe. And then they came back up, and Officer Howard was going facing down Sycamore, and Jerry Johnson was facing the other, and they talked about that. There's no reason to suggest they were doing something else. Robert Kelly, despite the fact he's obviously wrong about where the defendant was when he fired the other shots, he's probably about right about the other. When he pulled it in, and Matthew coming out. And Tony Howard, as he indicated, he had to somehow reverse. So he had to back up, or they had to do whatever, but they came to that. High-risk traffic stop. It doesn't really matter. It obviously wasn't. It wasn't a traffic stop at all. He was basically, he saw him. And remember Sergeant Aubrey Epps had talked about how he called him after he found the Cadillac on Little Oak. He had him on the phone. He heard him say something to the effect of, show me your hands, and then he was, I gotta go. And then he heard, show me your hands, and hung up the phone. Tony Howard did. He must have called Tony right before, in the middle of this. No? Tony Howard had no idea what was going on. The defendant, Jamie Hood, was not trying to run from Tony Howard. Truthfully, no, he didn't even know that was Tony Howard. He wasn't running from him by going from his passenger side to run that distance and to run by Tony Howard's driver's side. If you're running away from somebody, you don't run toward them and by them. Common sense would dictate otherwise. What you have is, he was doing that purpose. Tony reached out to him with both hands out the window. He had a little bit of them at that point. And he pulled away. Year saw him run past Officer Christian's car and come back. Robert Kelly, while he's obviously mistaken because there's two cars and two sets of shots, he does say that he went from the back one car to the front before he turned and shot that second set of shots at that time. It didn't really matter whether his gun was against the glass, whether it's not against the glass. He clearly, Officer Christian, was shot from the side. brought in detail the 911 recordings, the CAD documents, and the radio dispatch. It was clear that he was in the call that he was on. It was clear that he was on a phone call. He was given that phone call with his attention. Unavailable. Probably gone down Sycamore initially to try to look as the other officers had, and they didn't find the Cadillac, and they went available. Moss and McReen went to the Europe. Officer Howard was on Broad Street. He recalls going to the parking lot of the Omni, used to be an old Kroger out there. Before they called him basically to do that because it was change. And they called him back to basically say, hey, can you look at this? Because they didn't want to basically have everybody else. They were on shift change. And they called the weed and seed folks to kind of fill in during that shift change time period, just like Jerry tried. Buddy Christian was available too. That's why he was given that call that went on and we listened to it. And it was patched through the 911 center. And you saw the times, and we went through that in detail about the last time he spoke on that phone. Less than 40 seconds, 30 seconds. You hear central arm shot, central arm shot. Oh my God. His number was on the screen. The dispatch folks saw that. It was coming from him. The record showed it was coming from him. And the defendant took off running. Officer Christian never saw it coming. The pictures of his family, his wife, his children playing on the screen. Playing on the screen. We don't know, and we'll never know whether he saw the defendant, whether he heard the shots with the window up, whether he realized anything that happened, whether he heard some sounds and not knowing they sound like fire. What was it? Officer Howard's car was kind of in that complex, in that parking lot. It wasn't readily seen. He had been down there at that entrance to Timber Chase, kind of back in, like Mr. Tanner indicated, talking on the phone. And he started rolling up, and he obviously put his car in park because after he was shot, it didn't keep rolling. He didn't have a chance. Just like Tony Howard. The defendant left, ran away, took advantage of his lumpkin as well. And as he himself indicated, she was frightened to death, terrified about what he was going to do. Taking her car and taking her and kidnapping her for a period of time on the road, and then kicking her out of her vehicle and taking her vehicle. But man, I'll leave it somewhere now, because somehow that makes it okay. This man somehow talks about how he wanted to turn himself in. Not once did he do that. Gotten out of that red SUV and laid on the ground just like Matthew. He didn't have to bring that weapon with him out of his car. And it was Jadon's weapon. Jadon said he had one that looked like it. He got it stolen. It was a Taurus 45. It was his girlfriend's. And he got it stolen a while back. The defendant didn't have to take it from his car. But he did. He had it his way. waistband. And he had it there in the red SUV. And he could have just as easily gotten on the ground. But he ran to Officer Howard's car. He's a police officer. And for several days, he was on the run. On the morning of the 24th, he shows up early morning at Darius Lanier's house. And he threatened him with the gun and the grandmama with the gun. And he talks about what he'd done at that time. He'd done to Officer Howard and Officer Christian and to Amari Ray and to Jadon Brooks. And what he wanted to do, this court judge who presided over his case in the 90s. To the extent that Darius Lanier, when he went to the DRC that morning, reported at that time to Franklin Roebuck, his probation officer. They called Jeff Clark, who took an interview, and you listen to that interview about what he had to say. Some idea that Darius Lanier just wants to make it up. He told Darius Lanier that he shot Omar Ray with a different gun that he'd gotten rid of. That he had 7 cartridges, and there were 7 in the magazine. He had 1 live round in the magazine, but he had 7 in the magazine. It was found. That was the first the police had heard about the statements he made about Amari Ray. And he keeps on the run on a bicycle and tells these folks that he was out there looking for Kenyatta's aunt off Freeman Drive, looking for Rashid Scott and Little Bishop in Creekstone, and couldn't find them because he wanted to do stuff to them too. And shows up there on the morning of March 24th at Creekstone there, and little Shadon Janique, 13-year-old, comes out to the car to start it to go to middle school. And he takes her inside at gunpoint. He shows her the gun. And points a gun at Sheandre as she's coming out of the laundry area, putting on a shirt. Belinda on the sofa there asleep, waiting to go. Waiting to go later. She wasn't working that night. He goes back in where Mandrell was and points a gun at him and wakes him up and said, I want killing Omar to kill that cop, that officer. And remember, he told Sheandre, according to her, when he came in, before he went to Mandrell, he said, I'm wanted for 2 murders and for wounding an officer. And she wanted 2 murders. There was only 1 that she knew about. And over the period of that day and the next day, he's got these folks at gunpoint and threatens about what they'll do. What he'll do to them, including the children, including taking them out and to do a drive-by at Kenyatta's, Mama's house. And we're going to put the children in the car. And Ronaldo and Mandrell said, we're not going to do that. They weren't there of their own free will. Belinda and Ronaldo lived in Gwinnett County. There wasn't an idea, we'll just stay here because we want to. For over 2 days, until 11:30 at night, when you turn yourself in. And Shadon Janique's not going to go to school for 2 days. Belinda's not going to go to work, as she faithfully did. Sheandre's not going to go to work. Ronaldo's not going to work on Friday. They were free to go, and yet they decided we're going to stay here for these 2 days. And the gall of him to talk about, hey, You tell me we'll get the 50,000. You're going to split it with my mama and give my mama that. But it's his fault. It's the police's fault for not letting him surrender. It took him 8 hours to get that done. They were not hostages, but you heard the tape. That recording by Brian Gant on his phone. He was absolutely out of control. He was absolutely out of control. He would be a saying the buzz about it. Putting a 13-year-old on the phone at that time. It was a critical situation. He was ready to explode. And they didn't sure it didn't happen. And he repeatedly did that. Not once did he say, I'll come out, and put the gun down, and I'll lay down on the ground. He wanted to expand. He wanted all that. He was not. He wanted to make sure he maintained the control, the same control that he wants to maintain, just like he said yesterday. I'm going to say what I want to, Judge, and point the finger at the judge. I'm going to say whatever I want to. These guys came out. Quentin Ryden and Mandrell Hull. Because he didn't want them to stay in there. If he let the women out, he's worried folks are going to come in. He let them out with the kids. And Quentin is interviewed at 9:30 that night to 1 o'clock in the morning. Little did he know that Chandra was in another room right close to him, and Amanda Rulin was interviewing her. And she came out with the phone and gave it to Sarah Thomas, who took it in to him and showed it to him. And he seized the phone. I'll let you search my car, but I prefer, I can't give you consent for that, but I prefer you just give it away. They had it at that time. And they took charge of it at that time. And they downloaded it through the cell phone system. And you don't mess with it before you do that. And they pull the recordings off. And that these folks that were held hostage, they wound up hearing what he had to say for days, those 2 days, about what he had to say about what happened, what he'd done. How he described in detail what he'd done to Amari Ray. And you heard it on the recording. Some idea that that's not his voice is ludicrous. Some idea that somebody would create some recording on that in that manner to somehow describe about the IRS boys, about what he did to Jadon, what he did to Amari, and the details he got from these other folks. The same ones that he got from Darius Lanier, independently, the day before. Describing in detail the events of December 28, 2018. How he was trying to get at Kenyatta, the same reason he was trying to get at Jadon. I mean, the same reason he did that to Jadon, and he went over to Omari's house to do that. He made sure of that. And he lied in wait. And at that time, waited for him to get home. And he described what happened, which is what the majority said. Amari had left, and she was in bed, half falling asleep, watching TV. Heard some sort of boom, pow, or whatever. Something hit like it was against the door. And heard Amari's voice crying out, "Mom, Mom." And that she goes to that door. Hears the other sound. Winds up looking out and seeing a figure running. down the driveway, you get that fence. Cars are inside there, or as you can see. The neighbor next door, Amy Orr, that lived across the street, saw a figure basically running in the shadows. And she basically from across the street was running to her right, wearing a hoodie. And the man next door said he saw that figure running too, wearing a hoodie. Amy Orr particularly said she looked out that big window she had and looked to her right as far as she could see, and it ran across the street in the shadows of the houses there on the other side of the road from her house at 365. This red vehicle was parked in front of 355 next to Ms. Orr. If that person had run across the street and gotten into a vehicle, she would have seen that, and she's looking out the door there, looking out the window. And the police arrived. As you know, he was shot 7 times. 16 different defects. 8 entry, 8 exit. There's 1 entrance and 1 exit, re-entry. They found 6 shell casings at the scene. Aluminum, CCI, 40 caliber. 1 shell casing found in the back seat of the defendant's Cadillac, down in that little seatbelt area. Aluminum, CCI, 40 caliber. And it was tested. And it was the same. It was fired by the same weapon as the one that fired those 6 shell casings at the scene. Some idea about being involved. I get dope in Atlanta, and I come up here, and some guy winds up on one side of me, and some guy winds up on the other side. They're outside of his car with guns. Take my money and take my dope, but I open my door after popping the trunk. I open my door, and the guy sticks a gun at me, and I wrestle it over, and it fires, and another one fires like it basically was going to shoot me in the face. And somehow the other guy on the other side did nothing. And this guy here had somehow just left him alone. Somehow that must be how that casing got there. That's how it got there. And he got Chris Robinson come here and talk about that. Whose work record is not stellar. He would say whatever it is he thinks. He did say this. He can't say that the same gun made that bullet hole in the car with the same one that left that case. He did. Of course he did. Of course he did. It could be known. The defendant had a hoodie on. And he was firing that weapon. And one of them wound up in the hoodie. He jumped in his car. Got there, 7 cases, wound up in the back seat. How Amari Ray was killed. The details he provided matched up what happened? When you hear him on that tape talking about it, raising his voice, talking about how Amari was screaming for his mom and how it made him mad. Just like he was mad that Jadon was crying. Just like he raised his voice and used that kind of imitation here in this court. And he described it in detail. Those hostages who heard it, Darius Lanier, the recording that was made of his voice about going to the funeral, about basically going to kill the plug and lay it in the snow as it snowed that December, right around Christmas. Laid in the snow, but the guy came home with 2 kids and he didn't kill them. Evidence is there. Truth be known, what happened was he was not Campbell. He had fallen out. Kenyatta Campbell didn't want to have nothing to do with it. But the way he was acting, what he was saying. On occasion, he would talk about killing the police. And to do that for what they did to my brother, make him feel like what it feels like to lose one of their own. He's upset at Kenyatta Campbell. And he feels somehow Kenyatta Campbell basically ripped him off and went straight to the plug that he set him up with, in his mind. And he goes to Amari to get Kenyatta, just like he described, and he kills Amari when Amari didn't kill him. And kill him became an easier thing for him to do. And on that Sunday before that, March 22nd, he goes to Mandrell's house. And Mandrell tells him, I heard you're the one that killed the mom. And the defendant tells him, mind your own business. That's why he started talking about a wonderful mother. He decided right there and there he can get Kenyatta before things tighten up on him. He did have murder charges. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's why he got Jadon over there. He was going to kill Jadon. After it all unraveled, when Jadon got out of the trunk, he went on the run. And he was stopped by Tony Howard. He wasn't going to go back to jail. He was going to take out one of his officers. He didn't have to move on. It was Tony Howard or somebody else. And he shot him in point blank range. But for the grace of God, Tony didn't die. Shot and killed by a Christian. He continued on his siege. He said, I want to tell you why I did all this stuff. He did it because he wanted to kill. His actions have shown that's what he did during that time period. Evidence of that. You've done a job. For those reasons, I asked you to return a verdict of guilty of all counts.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I will just want to let you go to the jury room. Let me instruct you. Clearly, you still cannot discuss the case even among yourselves. You won't be able to do that until you actually start deliberations in the jury room. That would be the only place discussions about the case can take place. That will start Monday. We'll come in 8:30 Monday morning. I will give you the charges, the law. That's going to take about an hour and a half. And if we need to take a break in between, we'll be able to do that. I expect after that is done, we gather up the evidence that goes back to the jury room. We'll have that back there, and the 12 will start deliberating on the case. And I will let me address a couple of things. As far as the food request, if I can't make it happen tonight, it probably can tomorrow night. Contacts, well, I'm going to keep that note up here to somebody to make that call Monday morning. And I'll find out something about payment for those Monday morning as well. All right. So I'll let you go back to the jury room. That'll conclude your service today. And